everyone. It's Angela Stevens with the podcast Refocus Careers. And we have got Karen Goldner with us today. She is the Managing Director of Established Business Programs and Services for the WBDC. If you've not heard of that, that is the Women's Business Development Center. She's in Chicago. She's a dear friend of mine. If you have not heard the interview with her on Refocus with Angela, please check it out because you will learn so much about what she does, what her company does, the services for businesses. So check that out. But Karen, thank you so much for joining us.
So great to be with you.
You bet, you bet. So, all this podcast is all about careers and how you got where you were, and if you knew you were going to do what you were going to do now 20 years ago. But tell us, first of all, did you know you would always be with an organization like WBDC?
Never, never. I mean, when I went to college, I just thought that I'd end up working for the federal government, I guess, because I didn't really, I was a poli-sci major and I really, kind of liked public policy and stuff like that. And I never actually, I mean, of all the places I've worked, I've never worked for the federal government. But I started, I mean, I think of my career path as sort of like a wandering walk through a meadow more than anything
Yeah,
else.
and she went to the University of Nebraska,
I
right?
did. I
And
did.
then
Go
she got her
Huskers. Yeah.
MPA from Indiana University, I believe, right?
That's right. That's right. When I lived in Fort Wayne. And so, yeah, so I worked, I initially, like while I was in college, I did get an internship with a state senator, just as an internship. And he was an attorney. So I worked for him then one summer. And then I kind of leveraged that into when I moved to Indiana from Lincoln, because at the time that's where my husband was from. And he knew of another attorney. So I kind of talked myself into a job with him, and worked there for a while, and then started with the state of Indiana with the Indiana Employment Security Division and worked there for about a year and a half, and then got on with the city of Fort Wayne and
Great.
worked for several roles for them over the course of, I think, about 17 years. And then kind of burned out around 2000, just with the economy kind of crashing, and I was running economic development there at the time. So I had an opportunity with an entrepreneur and kind of learned how to do some of the sort of early stage investment stuff. Because, one of the jobs I had with the city was actually running a small business lending program. And I've always been fortunate enough to be able to have either formal or informal training of, places where I've worked.
And I want to interrupt you
Yeah.
real quick.
Yeah. It
Economic,
just keeps going. You had no
I know.
idea it was this long a story.
No. I want to hear it, but people don't know this. I was a search firm for 30 years, but before that, I worked at our Chamber of Commerce for 2 years, and I learned. I tell you what, that was the best job because I learned so much, met so many people, still have those contacts.
Yep.
But economic development, I learned that, and I think a lot of people, especially our young adults, they hear the term, but they don't know what economic development means. So,
Yeah.
because you've kind of really been around that term all your life, you mentioned that. Can you explain what economic development is to people that maybe have no idea?
Yeah, it means a lot of things, and that's why it's sort of confusing.
Yeah.
So, economic development can mean anything from, you know, organizations that are either local government or nonprofits in a community whose job it is to bring and help bring new companies to your town or to expand the companies that are already there, to working with small businesses and entrepreneurs to help them develop, and kind of everything in between. So it's really a lot of different kinds of things, typically done by nonprofits and or government agencies that support private businesses.
Yes.
So, that's probably the best way to think about it. But because it is so broad,
Yeah.
it's,
Okay. So that was really good. So continue, but I learned that early on, but I realized people don't know what that means. And
right.
economic development is the core center of businesses today. So
Yeah,
so
that's right.
continue. So
That's
anyway,
right.
so you went
Oh,
in that
sure.
direction.
So then I worked for this private group for a while and kind of learned a little bit about business investment. And then in 2000, late 2007, 2008, when, things sort of cratered during that period, we had raised a small amount of investment to put into small businesses, and this was in the Fort Wayne, Indiana area. And that fund was basically invested at that point. And I knew we weren't going to be able to raise another one. So I found another job with another investment group, small business investment group in Fort Wayne. I mean, I literally pushed my chair across the street, literally across the street, to this other group that had that had capital, and they were looking for somebody to run their fund. So I did that for several years, and then during that period, one of the companies that my group bought, I had been deeply involved in. We needed somebody to run that company, so I was like the interim president of this little factory
Wow.
for about a year. And I knew early in that period, I mean, I did that for a year, but before I even soon after I made that commitment, which was always going to be interim, I realized I really wanted to leave. I was sort of having a midlife crisis. So then I drove around for 6 months and ended up in Chicago.
Lovely.
Was gonna go into kind of consulting business with a friend. That sort of fell apart before it even got started. Ended up then connecting back into northern Indiana with some folks who I had known when I had been in Fort Wayne, and worked for them for a year and a half, and then started with the WBDC. And I will say that this is like my capstone great job.
I love
I love
it.
the
I love it. And
organization.
and
It's
tell
just,
us,
it's
okay, so
fantastic.
first of all, for anyone that doesn't know what the WBDC is, I will
Mhm.
say, as I mentioned on the other podcast, that I have gone through several programs. It's all, if you're a business owner, check them out. They have great programs on, how to run your business, finances,
Even
how
if
to,
you're not a woman, the
yeah,
W stands for Women's Business Development Center, but we work with all businesses.
absolutely, for anyone. And they have a lot of courses, and it's worth your time. And you can check those out at WBDC.org. We'll put a note there. But tell us, so you found this. So did you, I mean, when you found them, did you say, wow, do I want to work for this company? Or did you know about it? Or how did it start?
I found out about them because there was an article in the Tribune a few months after I moved to Chicago. Our outgoing now CEO, Amelia Domenko, was just coming in as CEO. So there was an article about her. So I reached out, and Amelia is one of those people who will respond to an email. I mean, she's amazing. And so I came in for sort of, it was kind of an interview, more of an informational interview, but it wasn't a fit at the time. And then about 3 months later, I had started with this Indiana group, and then they reached out. And so I was like, I just started with this other company. I'm not, I mean, I can't just leave them like that. Anyway, so we went back and forth like that for about a year and a half. And then finally, the right time was the right time. And so I started with them. Um, and I guess all the other things during, like when I was in Fort Wayne, at one point I was also on the city council for
Mhm.
a term, which was super interesting and mostly fun. And I also kind of taught, like just, night classes at Indiana Purdue Fort Wayne, now called Purdue Fort Wayne, which was also super fun and interesting.
Yeah.
Kind of like intro type classes. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So it's interesting. I look at your background, right? And you've got working with city, you got funding, finance, you've got working with the political, area as well, and nonprofit and organizations. And that's a really great direction because you can use those skills to go anywhere because your degree was in political science, right? And so for anyone that has that degree, that's a great run in terms of where you could use that degree. But talk to us about where you're at now. What is it like to be a managing director? What is a managing director of a not-for-profit company like this? What do you guys do? What do you do on a day-to-day basis?
hmm So I work with a team of about 10 people, and we do the Women's Business Enterprise Certification, which is one of the programs that the WBDC offers. It is the only one where you need to be a woman-owned company to participate. And so, that is a lot of just processing, file review and all that kind of stuff. And so several people on the team do that, and I work with them on that, kind of oversee that. I do a lot of time just spending time with clients who have any number of different issues, kinds of problems. And so sometimes I have to do some research for them. Sometimes it's stuff that we can just kind of talk about. And then I'm also involved in some of our program planning. Most of our programs are delivered by some of my program staff, but I do some of it. And then I work with them on the others. So we're developing programs. It is a nonprofit, so we also do kind of fund development, working with some of our corporate partners and some of our funders to make sure that we're able to provide the kinds of deliverables and results that they're looking for, and to help them. Many of our corporate partners in my department are really focused on finding great vendors,
Yeah.
suppliers and vendors. And so, sending out names and, so it's a lot of different things, which I love. I
Yeah.
am not the kind of person who would be able to do the same thing 40 hours a week.
Yeah, definitely. And I'll just say, I've gone through several of their programs, including Scale Higher and Top Shelf. One is really more in leadership and business. One is more in retail. And so, if you own a business and you are interested in this, take it from me. I'm one of their biggest fans. I highly recommend looking into it because when you apply, they actually interview you to take a course. Okay. And I just want to say this. I said it in the last interview, but I interviewed for two because I thought there's no way I'm going to get into both of them. And I did, and I did them at the same time. Don't do that, but I did it and I loved it. But it was an opportunity to, first of all, make myself better as a business leader and know, hey, I'm doing this right, or I'm not, or I could be doing this better. They on the Top Shelf, it was like, how do you get a product into retail? I have to say, I was a corporate recruiter for 30 years, still have my search firm, but getting a consumer product onto retail shelves is one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life. And
Yes.
I've done it, but with the WBDC's programs, I was able to learn how to pitch better. I was learning how to pitch to corporate vendors. It was so exciting. It was, and it's a serious program. So that is so exciting. So their organization, number one, is exciting. But and the people that work there, I want to give just like, for instance, if I were interested in working at the WBDC, the kind of people that work for you, I'm just going to take a guess here, are people that can do multiple things at once and multitask, have to be very organized, and have to be a team player and have a passion for helping businesses. Tell
Yeah,
me,
I
is
mean, I
that
think that
right?
that's
Or
100% right. And
okay,
it's in some industries there tends to be a little bit more of a sort of well understood career path. And if you want to become a CPA,
right?
you tend to do certain things. And that's not to say that every CPA takes that same path, but most do.
Yes.
Um, in our line of business, people come from all different walks of life. I mean, we have former business owners, we have people who have worked in the title industry. Actually, one of our gals worked in the title industry before. So I mean, it's just all over the map, right? And so it really is that kind of multi ability stuff, or multiple types of experience is really super helpful. And I think that is something. I mean, I would never have seen myself doing this when I was 20 years old.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you told me that I was going to do anything at all with math when I was 20 years old, I would have said you were an idiot. Um, but I really love a lot of the kind of, I mean, not accounting in the sense that I'm some sort of accountant, but looking at numbers and analyzing them. And I love that.
Yeah.
And that was
She's
not
great
part
and
of
she
my,
helps you.
it was
Yeah.
not part of my self-image, when
Yeah.
I was a young person.
Yeah.
So I think that, just being open to sort of letting yourself become kind of fully yourself, and but also recognizing that you're not, I mean, you're still going to have to do stuff you don't want to do.
That
I
is
mean,
the, you know what, that is the
I mean, there's
understatement.
parts of my job I
Um,
don't like. It's just that's why they pay you to do it. And
you
it's true
know,
if you're a business owner,
and
right?
that is the understatement. When COVID hit, many people know this. When COVID hit, we got an email from Amazon that said your product is not an essential item, and therefore you have to ship it out. I knew nothing about shipping. I knew nothing about packaging. I knew nothing. It could have put me under. It could have put me out of business, right? But I always say you turn the bad to good, and I learned it. And I thought, you know what? We're gonna get through this. And we have our own drop shipping station now, and we can ship out all
Yeah,
over the world. So you have to think differently and be open in your career.
that's right.
But one thing I want to ask you, when you interview people, they have the skills, right? But what is it that impresses you about somebody that you might want to hire?
Yeah. I think it's just that I mean, that they want to to both learn something and bring something to the job. So, if it's all
Love
about
it.
just, well, what am I going to get out of it if I interview with you, Angela, and what can you do for me, right? That's not a particularly attractive thing. On the other hand, you do want me to be open to learning stuff because no matter how experienced I am at whatever thing you're hiring me to do, if nothing else, I need to learn your way of doing it, right?
Right.
So and certainly with changing technology, I mean, if we do not do things the same way that we did them 5 years ago at the center.
Right.
And I mean, nobody who is still successful in their field of business does. I mean, we're
Right.
all changing, like you
Right.
said.
Yeah.
So I think that that's part of it. It's got to be people who seem like they will get along with the team.
Yeah.
Because, if you kind of come across as somebody who nobody, you don't really want to be around. I mean, you know, why would I want to be around you then? I mean, if you're
Right.
not, and it's not like, oh, you've got to, be somebody who goes out for drinks every Friday or whatever. Because I mean, frankly, nobody does that anymore. But just, while you're around your coworkers, that you can get along with them,
Right.
that you are, like you said, a team player, which doesn't always mean that you have to do everything. I mean, if you're second baseman, you play second base. You're not also
Yeah.
catching,
Yeah.
but you've got to be good at second base. And that means sometimes you're going to have to cover over toward first base too, whatever, right? I mean, you just have to, I mean,
That's an excellent point because we were between assistants, and somebody was like, "Well, who's going to do this invoicing or something?" And I said, "You are," because we're going to cross train. Everyone needs to know.
right.
You need to know what that assistant does for you to appreciate her, but also to cover for her if she needs to leave or something like that. So
Yep.
we always try to cross train. But I love that. But
It is.
I
Well, and
have
I want to also say, Angela, one other thing is, especially with anything that has to do with money, you cannot, if you're the business owner, and I know this is more for younger people, this podcast, but you cannot let only one person know how to do that because you are then at so much risk. And so, for people who are going into careers where they're involving, managing money or payments or whatever,
yeah,
um, you want to be aware of that your boss is going to need somebody else to also be able to do your job. And that's not because they don't trust you or they think you're bad or anything like that. It's because there's just too much risk in only one person knowing how to do that. First of all, you could leave and then they're stuck. Or
yes,
second of all, I mean, not that you would, but some people have sometimes are tempted and then they start, it's like, oh, I need to borrow some money for the weekend and I'll pay it back Monday. And the next thing you know, they owe the company $15,000
right.
and they've been embezzling. So you just, that's just something to keep in mind with money specifically, but more broadly, it is definitely true that you want to know, and that is to your benefit. The more, I mean, the amount of stuff that I've learned in my career just from listening to people or people maybe giving me a chance or me having to do something because the person who was supposed to do it wasn't able to or whatever. I mean, that's what positions you for the next gig,
Yes.
whatever that is.
Yes. I want to be clear on something to make sure that everyone understands what you just said. So, if a person is handling money at the top, the CEO, should they have another person that they trust to handle the money as well?
Well, I mean, I think it's a little bit different. If you're the CEO of your own company, you can't really embezzle from yourself so easily. I
Yeah.
mean, whatever. Now, if
Yeah.
you have business partners, then that is true. But so there's two reasons why you would have that second person. The first would be, to kind of make sure that when the one person goes on vacation, that somebody else can do the job and then can identify, yeah, everything seems to be fine, or, this is kind of strange. What is this account about? But the second thing is from the perspective of a CEO of a privately held company where you're the only owner, you just need somebody who can help you.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
and you want to think about, as the CEO, you want to think about what is the best use of my time.
Yes.
And
And yeah, you're
it may
exactly
not
right.
be doing payroll.
Absolutely. I think one of
Mhm.
the things that one of your speakers said, I can't remember who it was, but I remember this. They said, sometimes when you're starting a business, when let's say you're a young person or an older person starting a business,
Mhm.
um, the finances can be so overwhelming.
Yes.
And they said it could be that issue could be handled by hiring a part-time bookkeeper for maybe 5 to 7 hours a week. Something
Right.
as simple as that. I'll give another plug for QuickBooks. They have live bookkeeping. You can do
Yep.
something like that. But there are resources that are available. And so
Yep.
whether you work for the company or you own the company, I think it works both ways. If you can really prove yourself as somebody that's trustworthy to the business owner, you will be
That's
such
right.
a great asset. You will be such a great asset because it's not always easy, being the owner,
Yeah.
right? So that's really interesting. But with your career, one thing I did want to ask, so if you were going to do anything different and you were going to be an architect or something else, what would you have done?
Wow. I don't know
I
because I
love
just
these questions when I
I
can get somebody and they
yeah.
don't, because,
I
do you
love
think,
what I mean I love what I do,
yeah.
and I
Or did
kind
you
of
think you would be doing something different?
well, I thought I might be working for the government, whatever that meant to me when I was,
Never too
19 years
late.
old.
Never too late, Karen.
And well, it isn't, but but I don't want to now. I
Right.
mean, I really enjoy what I have found is that I think that my why is helping people achieve their dreams.
Love it.
And that is my dream, right? Is to be able to help you achieve yours. And so I'm in a position where I get to do that, and I get paid for it. I
I
mean, my
love
gosh,
it. I love
it doesn't
that's
get
amazing.
better, right?
That's amazing. That's amazing. Well, this is awesome. But I have one last question. If you had two young adults or five young adults sitting in front of you right now, and they said, "Listen, Karen, I went to school to be an attorney, or I did this, but I just really don't know what I want to do in life right now." What advice would you give them?
I think the first thing I would say is try everything. Don't say no to stuff. You know, and you might not like it all. I mean, I'm not saying do everything forever, but try everything. And I also think that kind of related to that is sometimes people can overestimate the importance of a particular decision. I mean, in the sliding doors kind of thing, all decisions are important. I turn left rather than right out of the building, and maybe I get hit by a bus. I mean,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
you don't know, hey, you don't have a way of predicting what that is, and so let it go. And if you're deciding, I mean, unless you're in one of those career paths where there's, the only way you're going to be able to get to X is by going through this step, then I guess you're going to have to do that. But just the things change so much. And if you're 20 years old, you're going to be working for 45, 47 more years. And so none of us know what the world's going to be like. I mean,
right.
frankly, in 10 years or 5 years. So, you know, don't, I mean, do what your gut tells you to do now. What seems like a good thing to do, or to some extent, maybe what you have to do, right? I mean, if you're not,
Yeah,
whatever, but learn from it. I mean, I have not liked every job I've had, right? But I've learned something
right.
from all of them. And then just, be open to new opportunities. And I don't want to say make yourself indispensable, but as a guy that I worked with years ago said, there's always room in an organization for somebody who said, yeah, I can do that. Then the key is then
I
you have to
love
make
that.
sure that you can do that, right? I mean,
I
yeah,
love
we need somebody to step into this brain surgery, Karen. Let's, go. No,
it.
I don't mean that, but
No, I
make
love that. Yeah, that's
be
great.
willing to help get things done,
Yeah.
and a lot of other problems take care of themselves.
I love that. My mother always said something to me that's always, if I ever got frustrated or got in the middle and I didn't know what to do, she would always say, take a class. And it used to make me really mad because I was like, I don't want to take a class. And she goes, well, take a class until you figure it out. And I was like, and that really got me on a track of really doing
Yeah,
research and learning. So do your
yeah,
research. But yeah,
absolutely.
so that's great advice, Karen, really. And so first of all, if you are a business owner, you're starting out, check out WBDC.org. You're going to learn a lot, but more importantly, listen to this over and over. Karen's giving you some great advice, and because no matter what you're going through, you can do anything. If you put your mind to it and you reach out to the people who can help you and give you the right direction, that is key. So Karen, thank you so much for being on this podcast. I graciously appreciate your time, and I know you're going to help so many people out there that are in that transition or in a place where they want to do something different. You've probably opened their eyes more than you can imagine.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It was great, and good luck to everybody out there.
You're welcome. Thank you.